Have you ever witnessed a scene so charged with prejudice that it left you speechless? Picture a sunny afternoon in a bustling park, laughter floating in the air, families picnicking under shady trees, and joggers weaving in and out of winding paths. Amid the serene setting, Keanu Reeves sits on a bench, minding his own business. Little does he know, an unexpected confrontation is about to unfold, one that will shake the crowd to its core. And before we dive into this dramatic story, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more real-life tales highlighting courage and kindness. It was the kind of day that welcomed everyone outdoors. Meadowcrest Park sprawled over lush acres of manicured lawns, dotted with flower beds bursting with color. Children ran about, their playful shrieks blending with the chirping of birds. Food stands beckoned with the aroma of sizzling hot dogs and sweet cotton candy. The warmth of the sun wrapped the park in a gentle embrace, drawing out couples for leisurely walks and bringing families together for weekend bonding. Keanu Reeves, wearing a gray pullover and jeans, had ventured here seeking a reprieve from a hectic week. Though known worldwide for his roles in countless films, Keanu cherished his moments of anonymity, those rare chances to just sit, breathe, and blend in with the crowd. The bench he'd chosen was near a quaint pond where ducks bobbed gracefully, occasionally nipping at morsels tossed by delighted onlookers. It was a perfect corner for quiet observation. He lowered the hood of his sweatshirt slightly, letting the soft sunlight warm his face. A child's laughter nearby made him smile. Every so often, a passerby did a double take, suspecting they recognized him, but with the hoodie and sunglasses, it was easy enough to remain low-key. Keanu inhaled deeply, shutting his eyes for a moment, soaking in the sense of peace. His schedule had been relentless, meetings, film commitments, and philanthropic endeavors, but here, at least for a little while, he could just be. While Keanu relished the park's calm, Officer Hale was in a different frame of mind altogether. A broad-chested, middle-aged policeman, Hale was known among colleagues for his short temper and unyielding biases. Over the years, he had earned a reputation for targeting individuals he felt didn't belong in certain neighborhoods or public areas. Today, he was on foot patrol at Meadowcrest Park, scanning the scenery with a critical gaze. The department had received sporadic complaints about petty crimes, pickpocketing or vandalism near the playground, but the real issue was Hale's personal approach to law enforcement. He presumed guilt first, particularly when someone looked out of place according to his narrow worldview. And with the sun overhead, shining on the diverse crowd of park-goers, Hale's prejudices quietly seethed beneath the surface. His eyes landed on a figure sitting on a wooden bench by the pond. Hood up. Sunglasses on. A solitary posture. It made Hale suspicious. Why was this man alone? Why dressed like that? Hale's pulse quickened as he conjured his own script. This guy could be a drifter, a threat, or up to no good. Hale strode over, boots crunching on the gravel path. A few picnickers looked up, mildly curious, and then glanced away. Keanu, lifting his chin, noticed the uniformed officer approaching. Initially, he didn't think much of it. Police often patrolled parks for safety. But the stern set of Hale's jaw and the glare in his eyes signaled something beyond a friendly greeting. "Hey," Hale barked, stopping a few paces away. "What are you doing here?" At that moment, Keanu could have offered a placid smile, introduced himself politely, or simply explained he was relaxing. But the aggression in Hale's voice made him bristle. Still, he retained his composure, pulling his hood back a bit more. "Just enjoying the afternoon," Keanu replied, his voice measured. Hale's gaze was cold. "Doesn't look like you're enjoying much. Looks more like you're loitering. People who don't belong here often try to hide." Keanu frowned. His initial reaction was confusion. What was the officer insinuating? "I'm not hiding," he said calmly. "I'm just sitting. This is a public park, isn't it?" "Yes, it is. And my job is to make sure everyone here feels safe." Hale's words dripped with a subtle but unmistakable implication: "You don't belong here." Something in the officer's tone stirred an unease in Keanu's gut. He'd encountered fans, admirers, even paparazzi, but seldom someone so openly hostile. Yet he stayed respectful. "I'm not doing anything illegal, officer. I have the same right as anyone to be here." A slight crowd began forming at a polite distance. They sensed tension, curious about what might happen. Hale noticed the onlookers but didn't relent. He took a step closer, looming over Keanu. "Folks who wear hoodies and hide their faces often have something to hide," he stated, tapping his baton against his thigh for emphasis. Keanu stood slowly, refusing to cower. The height difference between them was minimal, but Keanu's relaxed stance radiated quiet confidence. "Officer," he said, "I'm sure we can talk about this without accusations. I'm not hiding my face. I'm just resting. That's all." Hale narrowed his eyes. "You being smart with me?" Some passers-by pulled out phones. Sensing the tension was serious enough to record. One could almost taste the electricity in the air, the hush of tension overshadowing the children's laughter and the birds chirping. A mother guided her toddler away, unsettled by the officer's tone. "Not at all," Keanu replied, carefully modulating his voice. "I'm just stating facts." But to Hale, every word from Keanu felt like a provocation. In his mind, this was a disrespectful person ignoring the authority of law enforcement. His knuckles tightened on the baton. Memories of past encounters, where individuals had resisted his commands, fueled an internal fire. "Why don't you do as I say and leave?" he demanded. "You look suspicious, and I'm not taking any chances today." Keanu shook his head. "I haven't done anything wrong. If you'd like to see my ID, I can. Don't tell me how to do my job." Hale's voice boomed, startling a nearby flock of pigeons into sudden flight. His anger escalated, his breathing growing rapid. "I don't need your instructions. If I tell you to leave, you leave. That's the rule here." Everything happened in a jarring instant. Hale's frustration peaked, and he swung his baton with a force driven by rage rather than reason. It wasn't a measured action to subdue, it was an assault. The baton's steel tip landed heavily across Keanu's shoulder and back, eliciting gasps from the bystanders. Several onlookers screamed. Camera phones zoomed in, capturing the shocking moment. Keanu staggered forward, pain radiating through his arm and upper back. A swirl of emotions flooded him, disbelief that an officer would lash out so violently, anger at the injustice, and, beneath it all, a quiet resolve not to let this go unanswered. He'd come for peace, but now he faced blatant aggression. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some shouted at the officer, "What are you doing?" Others were frozen, unable to comprehend how quickly the situation had escalated. One woman cried out, "He did nothing wrong." Hale glanced around at the growing throng, a flicker of fear crossing his face. But his anger remained in control. "You should have listened," he spat, raising the baton again, apparently undeterred by the onlookers. Keanu, wincing from the pain, felt a surge of adrenaline. He wasn't a stranger to physical confrontations, he'd trained in stunts for films, studied martial arts, and maintained a strong physique. But more than that, he valued self-control. He steadied himself, eyes locking on the officer. The baton slashed downward again, and this time, Keanu deflected it with a swift, practiced motion of his forearm. The impact jarred through them both. Hale tried to pull back for another swing, but Keanu, harnessing reflexes honed from countless hours of fight choreography in real martial arts training, grasped the baton mid-swing. A collective gasp surged from the crowd. They saw something remarkable, the figure once in a hoodie, quietly minding his own business, now displaying a measure of skill that was nothing short of astonishing. With controlled precision, Keanu twisted his body, pulling the baton away from Hale, and flung it aside, out of immediate reach. "You're making a huge mistake," Keanu said, voice low and steady. The pain in his shoulder pulsed, but his resolve stood firm. He didn't want to escalate into full-blown violence, but he couldn't allow himself to be beaten without reason. Hale's eyes widened with a mix of shock and outrage. He was unaccustomed to losing control of a situation. He reached for his radio, but his hand shook. The crowd's mutters of disapproval grew louder. A few bystanders yelled, "Stop it," or "Leave him alone." The shift in the park's atmosphere was palpable. People sensed injustice in the air and were no longer passive observers. The officer lunged, attempting to tackle Keanu, but was met with a swift sidestep. Keanu pivoted, hooking one foot behind Hale's ankle. In a heartbeat, the officer stumbled to the grassy lawn adjacent to the bench, hitting the ground hard. Camera phones recorded every moment, capturing both the brutality of the first Baton strike and Keanu's defensive maneuvers. A hush fell over the area like a drawn curtain, replaced by murmurs, exclamations, and the beep of cell phone notifications as live streams and recordings spread across social media. Several bystanders darted forward to help or intervene, uncertain whether to separate the officer from Keanu or to shield Keanu from further aggression. Hale clambered to his feet, face red with shame and fury. He reached for his sidearm, but a chorus of shouts stopped him, "No guns. Don't shoot. He's unarmed." The tension soared to a breaking point. Keanu raised his hands chest high, palms out, in a universal gesture of no threat. "Officer," he said, speaking as calmly as his pounding heart allowed, "I'm not your enemy. I'm not resisting arrest. But you assaulted me." The crowds parted slightly when a trio of uniformed police officers, alerted by the commotion, rushed in. The leading officer, a woman with a no-nonsense expression, surveyed the scene, Keanu in a defensive stance, Hale bristling with anger, Baton cast aside on the ground, and the intense hush of shocked spectators. "What's going on here?" demanded the lead officer, stepping between Hale and Keanu. "This man attacked me," Hale blurted, pointing accusingly at Keanu. "He refused to leave, then resisted me." Keanu opened his mouth to respond, but a bystander cut in, waving his phone. "That's not true. I have it on video." The officer struck him first, for no reason. Another bystander, trembling with anger, chimed in, "He told Mr. Reeves to leave without any cause. Then he hit him with the baton. Unprovoked." The lead officer blinked. "Mr. Reeves? Wait, are you Keanu Reeves?" She looked at Keanu's face more closely, realizing the man in the hoodie was indeed the internationally recognized actor. Shock flickered across her features. Meanwhile, Hale seemed equally startled by the revelation. His eyes darted around, piecing together the fact that he'd just physically assaulted a high-profile celebrity, in front of dozens of witnesses. The crowd pressed closer, glimpsing the dynamic shifting rapidly. Hale's bravado faltered, replaced by a grim realization that he was in deep trouble. The officer who'd confronted Keanu had no idea about his identity. His hostility was based purely on prejudice and assumption. I didn't know," Hale stammered, sweat beading on his brow. "You can't just sit here with your face hidden." I had to do something." Keanu pursed his lips, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He swallowed the retort on his tongue, recalling that ultimate courtesy, remain civil, especially before the rest of these officers who seemed genuinely determined to handle the situation properly. "I explained I was doing nothing wrong," Keanu said simply, rubbing the back of his shoulder, still sore from the baton blow. He refused to listen. The lead officer exhaled, turning to Hale. "Officer Hale, we're going to need your badge and weapon while we sort this out." Hale's face twisted in protest. He was suspicious. He wouldn't leave. "Suspicion is not a crime," the lead officer snapped, her eyes blazing with frustration. "We'll conduct a thorough review. Meanwhile, hand over your badge and sidearm. We also have plenty of witness statements and videos." As Hale reluctantly surrendered his badge and gun, a wave of approval washed over the onlookers. Some clapped. Others sighed in relief. A teenager with pink hair stared at Keanu in awe, phone still rolling. She mouthed, "Oh my gosh," as she realized how unbelievably surreal it was to see an altercation like this starring Keanu Reeves in her very own neighborhood park. People came forward with their phones, offering to share footage with the arriving officers. The lead officer asked for calm, instructing them to queue so they could compile evidence. The atmosphere shifted from panic to determined unity. These bystanders wanted justice. No one should face unwarranted violence from law enforcement, whether a famous actor or an ordinary citizen. Keanu shifted on his feet, wincing at a twinge in his upper back. Adrenaline had masked much of the pain earlier, but it was creeping back now. Spotting his discomfort, a young woman in a floral sundress approached with a concerned expression. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice gentle. He managed a small smile. "I'll be fine, thanks. Just a bruise, I think." He glanced at the baton on the ground. It could have been worse. A senior official from the police department arrived after being radioed about the altercation. A short, tense conversation with the lead officer followed. Hale stood to the side, avoiding everyone's gaze. The senior official, wearing a crisp uniform and a solemn expression, approached Keanu. "Mr. Reeves," he said. "On behalf of our department, I apologize for what happened. We'll ensure this is investigated thoroughly. Are you in need of medical attention?" Keanu considered for a moment. "I think I'm okay. Just need some ice, maybe. But thank you for asking." The official nodded. "We'd also like to take your statement about what occurred. We can do so now or later, depending on what you prefer." Respecting the seriousness of the matter, Keanu glanced around at the still watchful crowd. "Let's step aside and talk. I want to say something to these people first." The air was still charged with emotion as Keanu moved to the center of a small clearing where everyone could see him. He exhaled, collecting his thoughts, then spoke in a calm yet resonant voice. "I appreciate everyone who stood up here, who took videos, who tried to help. What happened shouldn't happen to anyone, celebrity or not. Sometimes, it's easy for misunderstandings or prejudices to escalate into violence. But we can't allow that." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Several nodded, hearts still pounding from the drama they had witnessed. Keanu continued, "We live in a world where we should treat each other with respect, no matter how someone is dressed or where they choose to sit. This officer made a mistake. A serious one. I'm not here to condemn all law enforcement. I've met many officers who serve with dignity and courage. But we also need accountability. We need to trust the people meant to protect us." Applause erupted from the group. Parents with young children, senior citizens, teenagers, everyone seemed united in their relief that a violent incident had not spiraled any further. Overhead, a flock of birds took flight, as though celebrating the sense of unity that emerged in the wake of conflict. When the applause died down, Keanu's voice grew softer. "I don't hold a personal grudge against Officer Hale. But it's clear his approach today was wrong. It's my hope that we can learn from this. We all saw how quickly an assumption can turn dangerous. If we can have open conversations about prejudice, we might prevent incidents like this from happening in the future." A hush of respect settled over the crowd. Several people wiped away tears, others wore resolute expressions that suggested they wouldn't soon forget this day. Then, stepping back, Keanu nodded to the senior official. "Thank you all for listening. Let's handle the formalities now." The official guided Keanu a short distance away to take his statement. Meanwhile, the lead officer and a few subordinates managed the growing line of people waiting to share their videos or testimony. The communal sense of purpose was strong. Nobody wanted to let an injustice slide, not after seeing it firsthand. Half an hour later, the situation had calmed. Officer Hale was taken aside, stripped of his badge pending an inquiry. The park's normal rhythms began reasserting themselves, children once more played tag, the food stands resumed business, and joggers returned to their routines. Yet one could sense an undercurrent of solemn reflection. Everyone had witnessed a stark example of what happens when authority is misused, and how a community can stand together to set it right. Keanu, rubbing his bruised shoulder, found a small bench near a massive oak tree. He slumped down, exhaustion finally catching up with him. A teenager in a baseball cap approached hesitantly, phone clutched tight. "Mr. Reeves," he ventured, "would it be okay to get a photo with you? No one will believe what happened." Despite his fatigue, Keanu gave a gentle nod. "Sure, kid. But no need to create more drama. Keep it respectful." This was a serious situation. The young man stood next to Keanu, snapping a quick selfie. Then, recalling something, he muttered, "Thanks for speaking up. My uncle had a run-in with a cop before, it didn't end well. So, yeah, thanks." Keanu managed a small smile. "Take care of yourself," he said, and the teenager nodded gratefully before darting away. Soon after, the senior official returned. "We have your information, Mr. Reeves," he said. "We may contact you if we need further details. For now, you're free to go. We appreciate your cooperation, and again, we're sorry you had to endure that." Keanu stood, wincing slightly as his back protested. "I hope it'll lead to something positive in the department," he responded. "That's all I ask." He scanned the park once more. The tranquil pond glimmered in the afternoon sun. The same bench he'd been on earlier was now occupied by an elderly couple feeding breadcrumbs to ducks. Life continued, as it always does. And yet, for those who had witnessed the incident, the day held new significance. It was a memory they would carry, a reminder of prejudice, but also of the power a community has when it refuses to remain silent. In the end, this story isn't merely about Keanu Reeves or a single unjust officer. It highlights universal themes of respect, awareness, and the moral imperative to speak out. When authority is misused, it can take a collective stand to rectify wrongs. Strangers banded together to record the event, to protest an unlawful assault, and to ensure accountability took root. Their actions showcased the difference everyday people can make. Have you ever found yourself in a position to either intervene or walk away when witnessing injustice? That moment of decision can define not just the outcome of a single incident, but your own sense of self. Standing up might be uncomfortable, but silence can be complicit. Ultimately, stories like this encourage us to be vigilant and to consider how we'd react if we were in the same place. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Have you ever felt like stepping in when you saw someone mistreated? Did you hold back, or did you speak up? Let us know in the comments. Your perspective might inspire someone else to make a different choice next time they witness a similar situation. The events in Meadowcrest Park, though shocking, serve as a potent reminder of the importance of empathy and vigilance. We never know when we might be called upon to defend fairness. Let this story be a seed that grows in our hearts, urging us to think twice before judging others and to stand up whenever we see a wrong being committed. If this story moved you, consider spreading kindness today. That could mean checking in on a neighbor, volunteering, or simply sharing a heartfelt word of encouragement with someone who needs it. Small actions can reverberate far beyond our immediate circle, especially in times when empathy seems scarce. Remember to subscribe to our channel Motivation for Success for more stories that illuminate the capacity for good in the face of adversity. Thank you for joining us, and may we all strive to create a world where dignity and compassion guide our every step.